Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on. And today, we're going to be taking a look at Dojoran for the Nintendo Switch. And I'd have to say, I've developed a great appreciation for these 1-bit games, because if you're not relying on graphics, the only thing you can really sell is solid gameplay, and Dojoran does not disappoint. Getting into the story though, I was a bit taken aback by the level of humor, because you start off the game with the absolute epic scenario of solo emergence into the world, and the curious and unforeseen transformation from tadpole to pollywog to frog. And not only that, you realize that everything is out to get you, and the fact that you've survived until this point is literally pure chance. And so hopefully, to earn one more day of existence on this horrible, horrible world, you're gonna undergo ninja frog training. Yeah, that's right. Ninja frogs. Like a boss. And it's this story and scenario that sets the entire precedent for the game's 40 levels. And I'm happy to report that the eShop's description did not lead you astray when it said these are 40 levels of ever-increasing difficulty, because the linear curve is quite linear in its progression from almost sort of easy to actually really, really difficult. Controls in Dojoran are as simple as you would expect from a really fundamentally basic platformer. Pretty much the only thing you can do is jump. But there are a few things that you kind of pick up along the way as you play. One of these is the fact that you can actually stick to walls, and at least in my case, I accidentally landed on an enemy and realized you can Mario them to death, and maybe even get a boost to a next platform. But other than bopping the field mice on the head, you really can't do anything else you could call an attack. But with endless lives, generous checkpoints, and a couple other mechanics thrown in, if you are willing to commit to trial and error, you're probably going to find your way through the game pretty quickly. But I do want to make it clear there is a lot of trial and error in the game, because while the mechanics are simple and straightforward, there may be different ways to use them. You'll find apples early in game that give you a double jump, but merely spitting out the apple might lob you a little bit further forward, or you can spit out the apple and wait and bounce off of it in midair to launch yourself higher. So just saying that the apple gives you a double jump is a little bit unfair to how complex it can actually get. Flies, which you might find somewhere in the levels, can act as an extra life, and then there are giant collectible coins that should have at least one in every level. And so if you are looking to 100% this one, you're probably going to have to try to find some of these, because they're hidden in some pretty tricky places. And not only that, the later you get into the game, they're going to be pretty hard to get to and really hard to get back from. Because just tagging the coin isn't enough to get it in your inventory, you have to tag the coin and then manage to make it back to a safe space before dying. Other than that though, Dojoran is exactly what you'd expect from an early classic arcade style platformer. There's some moving platforms, some spikes, a couple of sparse enemies, and a lot of really tight and technical platforming. Thank Jeebus, the controls are as tight as the platforming itself. Because there is nothing more frustrating than a technical platformer with sloppy hitboxes or floaty controls. But moving into Dojoran's presentation, I already mentioned that it's pretty much a 1-bit color palette. You got black and you've got white, and that's it. That's all you get to choose from. Sorry. But the character design and the enemy design and the level design, honestly, I thought was great. Because there's everything from little cutesy enemies to the absolutely hilarious death animation for the main character, which honestly takes a little bit of the sting out of it. The soundtrack as well in Dojoran was incredibly unexpected. It's really, really good. And I actually found the new soundtracks being one of the motivations for me to continue to try and make it further and further into the game, because every couple levels I got a new really killer song. But as with every single video game, arguably in the entire world and the entire existence of video games that there has ever been or ever will be, there are things a player might want to be aware of before diving into this game. And for Dojoran specifically, while it does have a fairly low price tag and 40 levels to offer, it might not take you much longer than 2 hours to beat if you're fairly gifted at platforming. Getting it on its initial release sale, I think I paid $3.99 for it, but even then its native price tag around $5, I'd say is pretty worth it if this is your jam, if you're really into the arcade style platformers. But the next point is that it's not a gigantic platformer. It doesn't have some massive interconnected map, and there's really nothing other than that initial motivation to keep you in it. So be ready for distinctly separate levels. And other than that, if you're not a fan of technical platformers like Super Meat Boy, because that just causes you to break way too many Joy-Cons, while the early levels of Dojoran might be completely manageable, the later you get into the game, especially considering how tight the controls are and the developers really, really make you use it, later levels can get a bit frustrating just because they're so challenging. And so if you were looking at Dojoran because it's a Gato Roboto looking goofy little arcade game, well, that's exactly what it looks like, but it can get fairly punishing. Other than that though, I'd have to say, considering the entire experience, it's pretty much what you see is what you get. And so in that sense, I got exactly what I wanted, with a little bit more with the comedy elements and some of the cutesiness, and a whole lot of very fair and very well balanced challenge. And so for anyone with a retro gaming background, you're probably really gonna enjoy this one. But anyway, as a fairly short, simple, and straightforward game, that does about wrap up the review of Dojoran, now on the Nintendo Switch. So if you enjoyed the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a comment or a like to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. People are always commenting on the videos being like, how come your channel doesn't blow up? Why don't you have more subscribers? I don't know, you tell me. Why aren't you subscribing? But seriously, I do put my heart and soul into this, and it's not for the subs, it's not for the money, because God knows YouTube doesn't pay anybody anything anymore. But I really do enjoy what I do, and I love making resources for gamers. So if you do like the channel, share it with your friends, show it around, and please ask them to subscribe. Because we are putting out 2 indie game reviews a week, and with thousands of indie games out there and new and unique ones coming out literally every single day, there's a really good chance that whether it's an absolutely unforgettable gem or a super easy hard pass, you're probably going to be finding reviews of games you've never even heard of. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.